Hello. All right, so bear with me for a second. How do we know that there's no intelligent life in the solar system elsewhere besides us as human beings? How do we know that there's no intelligent life in our solar system besides human beings? How do we know that we're the only source, for example, of intelligent life in our solar system or universe, as far as we can tell? How do we know that? Because our definition of intelligent life, we don't even have that down for this planet. For instance, well, first of all, what is intelligence? That's a whole entire diatribe. You could go on for 57 books worth. What is intelligence? Okay, let's move beyond that. We have a general understanding of what we mean by intelligence. Okay? But on this planet, we don't know what is intelligent and what is not. By our own standards of what intelligence means. We don't know what is intelligent and not. What do I mean by that? It's been a long time that I've been hearing about this idea that plants communicate with one another. Maybe you've heard it. I feel like this idea was put forth to me a decade ago, more, 2 decades ago, longer. And obviously I'm not at the forefront of the research, so people have been researching this or coming up with ideas about this longer. And I'll kind of interject, obviously, spiritual traditions and metaphysical traditions have been putting forth that plants could communicate or have some higher life force for a long time. But let's talk about science. People have been putting this forth scientifically for decades. Recently, I heard, and now once again, this is me going off the cuff, so I apologize for my lack of clarity on the subject, but it may be, it actually probably was like 6 to 8 months ago at this point. I heard on NPR, a woman had come out with a book where she was amassing studies on this, plural, looking into this left and right. Maybe the details are fuzzy now. Maybe she herself conducted one of these studies, but she was looking into plants communicating with one another. Okay, so the book was essentially, her claim was essentially that it's kind of getting beyond theoretical projections at this point that plants can communicate. And, right, all claims of strength are going to say this is now fact. But her evidence was relatively convincing. Okay, now again, I don't want to go down that wormhole too much further. I don't have the book in front of me, so it's not that I could go further with it than that. But the point remains that it was not just from this one example, but numerous times I've been told that plants can send signals, whether it's through their roots to, I think this is one of the methods they talk about, through their roots to other plants to let them know danger is nearby, poisonous things perhaps, conditions which would not be conducive to the plants. So numerous times have I heard that plants are sending signals through their roots. Now, again, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I do feel like there was other sorts of ways they could communicate, whether it would be with their leaves or the kinds of fruits they give off or the kinds of seedlings or whatnot. There'd be more than that as the sole way that plants could communicate. So, anyways, we could elaborate on that. You could look into it yourself. I'm going to go ahead and concede that I feel like there's scientific backing behind it already. Okay. So plants might be communicating with one another. I'm going to go ahead and say plants are communicating with one another. Okay, we've also long had centuries and millennia, depending on your belief system, the belief that humans are the only ones who communicate, right? I have had dogs. I have had cats. I communicate with those animals. I make sounds, and they know what the sounds mean. They make sounds. I know what those sounds mean. I'm going to go ahead and qualify that as communication. Beyond that, my cats, my dogs have known my mood. I've known theirs. Didn't even need to communicate. Could just see them, be like, oh, I can tell. Oh, they look at me and they go, oh, damn, watch out for him. Or, oh, when I was sick and had cancer, before I was even diagnosed, I would come home working a job in the summer doing construction. I would come home, and I was young, 18, 19, I think at this time, full of energy. Normally at the end of a construction day in the summer, I would be still bouncing off the ceilings, ready to go out and party, hang out, longboard, hike. I started coming home sick and tired, literally falling asleep. I was going to say passing out, virtually passing out, but literally falling asleep, laying on the trampoline outside and falling asleep in the middle of the afternoon for an hour or two. Yeah, the job was hard, but that was absolutely not it. This was completely unlike me. And as I was sick, I had sickness in my body, I had tumors growing in my body. My cat, Marley, named at the time, knew something was up. I knew that because he was acting differently than he would normally act. He was coming to that trampoline and laying next to me and kind of, connecting, touching his body to me, like laying up next to me, almost guarding over me, as if there was a sick creature in the pack. That is a communication. That is intelligence. Okay, furthermore, so there we go. Anyways, our definition of intelligent life forms on Earth, already a little shaky. I would expand it to plants, animals. They all have intelligence. All right, so moving forward, what is the point of all of this? Let's expand it a little wider. Let's expand a little wider. But the final note in detail, this one's a little metaphysical. What is even the source of life? What is happening when something's alive? What makes it grow? What makes it think, speak, talk, breathe, consume, produce waste? What makes all of this happen? Okay, we don't know that one. Just throwing that out as another question. Okay, so life. We're not sure what intelligent life is on this earth. I will extend it pretty far. I would even go into the deepest metaphysical, supernatural kind of thing and say, I think all things on this planet have some source or some life within them. Okay? And that is what extends my believing or extends my questioning beyond Earth. When we look at Jupiter, for instance, that big red planet, and we see swirling storms that have been going on for centuries as far as I'm aware. Maybe we know of them going on longer than that, but we talk about storms that last for hundreds of years. What is that? What is that big ball of gas which has storms? What is a storm? It consumes, it breathes, it produces waste, it expels energy. Consumes energy, expels energy. How is that not life? How is a storm itself not life? We know electricity is fundamental to our living, our heartbeat, which is dependent upon or has electrical signals within it, which can be sparked back to life with electricity. How is a storm not life? Is the first question. Second, whether it's intelligent or not, how the bleep do we know whether or not a storm has consciousness or intelligence? How do we know? We don't. I see clouds above my head. I think they might be alive. They might have consciousness. They might be intelligent. We, as we have done with the mechanical universe repeatedly for centuries, think everything is just dumb and lifeless, and it's all just the billiards banging around as coincident or accident. I'm not quite so sure, because the more and more we discover with the science, the more and more we discover there's something beneath. And if a storm is life, if a cloud's alive, if it's truly alive, maybe that's maybe it has intelligence. How do we know what it looks like to be alive? Why does being alive have to entail eyes and a mouth and a nose and so on and so forth? Maybe the cloud breathes in a way that we're not even aware of. Maybe the clouds above me right now are breathing and living a life. And who knows how long their life is? Maybe it's a short life. Maybe it's a long life. Maybe the life of those storms are centuries long. Maybe there's something keeping them alive. It's eating and breathing. Storms are eating and breathing. It's just a thought to think about. I think about it that what is all that energy on, again, Jupiter in particular, but how do we know? How do we know what life looks like on any of the planets? I had this thought just the other day about what would it look like to be a tree? Okay, you're a tree. We all concede that they are alive, do we not? We know that trees breathe. We literally know that. They're producing oxygen, but even on the more annual scale, there's a breathing in spring and there's an exhalation in autumn. Maybe that on the grand scale is even one breath for a tree. Maybe that in and out is 1 year, one breath for a tree. We know trees live hundreds of years, some thousands of years. You know, and then so the time scale is very malleable. Isn't the time scale as there was some flies that live for a day? There's, I'm sure, millions of insects that live for a day. And that day must seem like a lifetime to them. That's all they know. They're born, they have their middle part, the beginning, middle, and end. They don't think, I've got another 65 years before I retire and go to Boca. No, they're alive, and that's their time scale. The tree also doesn't think, the tree that lives 2,000 years or 1,000, 2,000 years doesn't think after 65 years, they don't think, well, it's been a good run, time to hang it up. No, they're thinking, God, I'm just at my 10% of the way here. Not even 5%, 10%. They're thinking they're young. So I was thinking about the tree in particular as it's taking breaths, thinking about life as a time lapse, right? If it's experiencing what we think of as a lifetime, 1 human year must fly by in a blink of an eye for them, almost 1 breath, right? And maybe different creatures take breaths at different rates. Maybe it's not 1 human breath, but maybe a breath of a whale, which, what, can they hold their breath 45 minutes longer, some of them, hour and a half or something? So maybe they breathe, a tree breathes once, 1 year happens, and it's like an hour for us. What I'm speaking about here is now perception. What is a year? What is 1 breath to a tree, to a human, to a cloud? There's energy in storms. We watch storms, we trace them and track them along our own planet. We track them for weeks at a time sometimes, right? We track them across the planet. We talk about them in terms of energy and what they're taking in and what they're putting out. But we attribute it to some sort of accident, some sort of mindless accident. Maybe they're more intelligent than we think. Anyways, no matter what you want to rank it and say as intelligent or less intelligent, maybe a cloud or a storm on Jupiter is alive. That is my end-all claim here. I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't know if the clouds on Jupiter are alive yet. No one's been there. And even when we get there, maybe we won't be able to tell if they're alive or not. But what if something, that would be really interesting. I always wondered that. Could we land something on Jupiter? Could we land some sort of satellite to go through those clouds? Maybe you set it up with some spotlights just in case it loses the sunlight. What's inside of Jupiter? I know they say it's a gaseous planet, right? And this is ridiculously simple, I know, but like, what is its core? Is it a liquid core? It couldn't just be a pure gas core. There's got to be eventually solid in there somewhere, right? What is that like? What is the surface of Jupiter? And I know that if I'm wrong on the details of Jupiter right now, it's pretty ridiculous. But as always, going off the cuff on these videos, just an idea I had. I've long had the idea about whether a cloud is alive or not. And on Jupiter in particular, it just seems of particular interest, the storm patterns on that planet. You know, like what lightning exists on there. I haven't heard this one. I'm sure they have theories and know about lightning and its existence on Jupiter. But I'm interested to know what kind of lightning exists on Jupiter. Is that not life? Is lightning not life itself? Is electricity not life itself? One final, this is a little more recent, and again, a million people have thought of it before. We talk about fire. There's that age-old question, is fire alive? I want to go ahead and say it is. It breathes, it eats, it consumes. It has a life force unto itself. If fire is alive, and I think it is, wouldn't the sun be one massive ball of life? Or maybe there's a million different flames, a billion different flames, a trillion different flames. Maybe it's a city. Maybe it's a metropolis. Maybe the sun is life. And I know, they've been worshiping it as life for a bajillion years. A bajillion years. People have praised and thought of it as a god and all that. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking more practically. What if the sun's a person just like me, except it's just fire? Right? What if all this whole time it's a consciousness watching things flying around it, right? What if it's just looking out and thinking, these are interesting little dots of dust forming around me here? Yeah, I'm going to send out some electrical, solar, what we would call those, solar flares. There's other sorts of electromagnetic flares that come off it, I do believe. Right? What if that's it? It's coughing, or it's breathing, or it's reaching out, saying, hello! Why do we think that sound or communication is going to be a verbal, audio thing? Maybe communication this whole time is something else in other ways, often in the universe. All the radio waves we're getting out there, gamma rays, radio waves we're receiving and picking up with our technology. Maybe that is literally just the voice of something else. Maybe that is a voice of something else. Maybe the sun is a human more than a god. Right? And that's kind of my premise here. I didn't think of phrasing it that way until now, but less of a god and more of a person. Just another being doing its job, waking up being like, gotta burn today for another billion years. Who knows about this time scale, man? We think like that's so long. We are here for a blink. Seemingly so much else is operating on a longer scale than we, so it seems. Okay, so that is my my premise for today. What is life? What is intelligent life? Why is a storm on Jupiter not considered intelligent life? If you really want to boil it down. I'm going to posit that maybe it is. Maybe it is life. Maybe it's intelligent life beyond that. Conscious life, intelligent life. Is there a difference? I'm sure philosophers have wrestled with that one. And I'm sure you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, of course, and here's the difference. I don't know. You break it down for me. What's the difference between conscious life and intelligent life? Can there exist intelligent life that is not conscious? I don't know. I don't think so. Just right now in the moment pondering it, I don't think so. I think those two are necessarily codependent upon each other. To be intelligent, you would have to have consciousness. To have a consciousness, you would need to be intelligent, right? Okay, anyways, before I meander down another path, life on Jupiter. All right, thanks everybody. Take care.